Hello everyone, and welcome to AustCham Thailand's Business Connections Community, an online program where we provide regular updates on what's happening in the Australian Thai business community. I'm your host, Brendan Cunningham, the Executive Director at AustCham, and once again we have an informative session lined up for you. Stay with us. Welcome back. In today's business section, I know it will be popular for our members, especially our SME members, as we have a very brief snapshot of some of the key legal updates in Thailand. And for this, I'm joined by AustCham Director and Counsel at Tilleke and Gibbins, Chaiwat Keratisuthisathorn. Chaiwat, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. And because it's Anzac month, 25th of April is of course Anzac Day, and we commemorate that with our good friends at New Zealand. We've got the President of the New Zealand Thai Chamber and founder at Premier Thai Lawyers, Kun Maya Pearson. Maya, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Okay. So Maya, can we start with you? The first topic I would like to review, 2 years ago we actually started reviewing this. I remember started preparation for the PDPA, the Personal Data Protection Act. 2 years on, it's still not implemented. I believe it's coming soon. Can you update for our members what's happening with PDPA?
Yeah, of course. I think because of its 2 years already being postponed, so most of the companies are already aware of the Personal Data Protection Act, or we call it the PDPA, that will come into force on the 1st of June. But it's still a long way to go until we are all fully compliant. A recent PwC survey showing that 51% of the companies have already started their PDPA process. But it's only 5% of the companies just finished.
Finished?
Yes.
Wow. That's 95% of companies who aren't ready for PDPA yet.
Correct. So 95% of us still have a work to do.
Right.
And we have only a couple of months to update our data.
Right.
So I have a few lists of what we have to do from the long list. The first thing we have to do is map out our current data processes, implement consent procedure,
Right.
and data handling solutions, draft and distribute all our new data privacy policies, implement separate process for sensitive personal data, and I still can go on and on.
Right.
How much time do you have?
We only have a short segment here, but I understand the importance of it, of course. So it has been postponed numerous times already. What if it's postponed again? Can we wait?
Just get it done.
Just get it done. That's the message on PDPA, just get it done. To all of my chamber colleagues out there, executive directors running chambers, I think we all need to take the lead on this and make sure that we're getting it done as well, and encourage our member companies to do so as well. So thank you for that, Mayor. Our next topic, Kun Chaiwat, I believe this topic has been, this change, this reform has happened recently, and it's on the back of a lot of criticism around the law. I'm talking about competition law. Can you give us some insights into the changes there?
Yes. In the past, the Trade Competition Commission has enacted the trade competition laws for a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But in the past, there has been a problem whereby the law is not fully enforced, mm-hmm. and there is no sub-regulations issue for the past laws. Right. So in 2018, the Trade Competition Commission has enacted the new competition laws, whereby now when you have the merger and acquisition deals, you need to consider the pre-approval, right. or post-notifications, mm-hmm. process before you decide or proceed with the merger and acquisitions. Mm-hmm. So that is the new process that you need to be aware when you do the M&A deals.
Right.
In addition to that, so recently the OTCC, Office of the Trade Competition Commissions, has also issued the guidelines to govern the aspect of the transactions, some high risk profile transactions, including the recent rules and regulations on the food delivery platform to protect the market in Thailand and to prohibit them for doing anything that will cause the unfair trade.
Right.
Yeah. So that will be very important for the investor when you consider dealing with the trade competition aspect.
I see. So we have had numerous members contact me asking about the changes to competition law. I'm not familiar with it, of course, and I will refer on to our legal members. If you do have any questions, I seriously recommend that you do follow up and get deeper insights into this. So thank you, Kun Chaiwat.
Thank you.
So Maya, I don't think that in the past year we've had any conversations relating to business where we haven't touched on the COVID-19 conversation. So there have been numerous updates in the legal sector on COVID-19 relief. Can you give us some updates on what's recently happened?
We can't talk about anything else without mentioning COVID-19. And for us in this legal industry, we have to keep updating the COVID relief measures which is issued by the government. We can expect on more extensions for something like social security contributions, which the government helped in the past, but you have to keep updating on it because the maximum percentage of the contribution is 5% and they reduce it down to 3%, but it might not be the same this month. And we also expect that the government will be able to help us more in terms of doing the business until things are looking better, especially on the economic side.
Certainly then. So, and a reminder to our AustCham audience that we still receive regular updates from the Australian Embassy media team that we put on our COVID-19 website page on a daily, every 2-day basis. So please keep yourself checking in there, and if you would like deeper insights, once again, contact one of our legal members. So expanding on that, we mentioned social security loan relief. Tax is quite a big one, Kun Chaiwat. Can you elaborate a little further on the COVID-19 tax measures and relief?
Yes, sure. So there have been several tax measurements provided by the government during the COVID-19 pandemic period. But the most recent impact regulations will be on the foreign digital services. So right now, if the foreign operators of the digital service want to engage the activities in Thailand, for example, like video streaming or other kind of the virtual outsourcing platform, or basically is anyone doing business online from abroad now, so they are subject to VAT, value-added tax filings, in Thailand. So this quite a big impact on the foreign investor or foreign business operator on the digital platform.
Okay.
Another issues will be on the land and building tax, which right now the land and building tax was firstly collected last year. But last year, due to COVID-19, the government has granted 90% tax reductions. So it means that the owner of the land and the building will be only subject to only 10% of the actual amount of tax. The same thing applies to this year. The government has already extended the 90% reduction for the taxpayer of the land and building tax this year also. So this year again, the owner of the land and building will be subject to only 10% of the actual amount of tax payable for the land and buildings. In addition to that, the government also extended the deadline from April 2021 to June 2021. But in any cases, even though you have the tax reductions and tax deadline extension this year, you need to prepare for the actual amount of tax to be payable for the future also, because it's quite big amount of tax that you get reductions. So if you do not prepare yourself well, so you may face with the big amount of tax in the future when the full amount of tax come into force.
So the message there is to take advantage of the tax relief now, but also to be prepared for the future payments that are coming.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. I'd like to change the subject a little now. As our AustCham audience would have seen, we've recently been engaging with the BOI quite extensively, with our President Benjamin Craig attending a meeting with our Australian Ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Alan McKinnon, to meet Kun Duanjai and the team. So I thought we would touch on that, Kun Chaiwat, if I could stay with you, and if you could provide an update on what the BOI promotions are at the moment.
From December last year, the BOI has provided several packages to the investors. That also include the open up the new categories for the BOI privileges. For example, the elderly care home facilities and internal business process centers. In addition to the newly opened categories, the BOI also provide additional tax privileges for the large-scale project, meaning that any project with the investment of at least 1 billion Thai baht can apply for the additional privileges under the BOI scheme. That also include the additional 50% corporate income tax exemptions with the additional period for another 5 years exemptions. And then BOI also provide packages for the digital economic and software industry, whereby the business is related to the software integrations, AI, machine learning, or big data analysis. That also be granted with the 50% corporate income tax exemptions and additional period. And also to apply for that additional privileges, you need to comply with the deadline of the BOI applications. So right now for the large scale project, the BOI has the deadline for the submission of the applications. They have to apply from January 4 to December 30th, 2021. So by the end of this year, if you are the large scale project, you need to apply the privilege with the BOI by the end of this year. While when you do if you want to apply for the package for the digital economic and software industry, you need to submit the application by the end of next year, 2022. In addition to that, in the past, BOI has also opened the tax privilege to the business investor who want to invest in specific area. We call it like special economic zones, and the 5 southern province border provinces. So this incentive is also involved with the corporate income tax exemptions, additional tax exemption period. So if you are located in those provinces, you can apply for the privilege by the end of next year or so.
Okay.
So in order to get the BOI privilege, if you are qualified, just be reminded that you need to submit the application within the deadline.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Our final update is on, it's a very interesting topic, Maya, in that I don't believe there were really business investment opportunities in the past for this product, and now with legal changes there are. I'm talking about the changes around medical cannabis. So can you update us on that? What's happening in the medical cannabis space?
Medical cannabis has been a hot topic in Thailand for the past 3 years now, I think, and the government still liberalizing the restrictions on cannabis quickly and positively.
Yes.
Recently, the developments include the legalization of the certain types of cannabis and hemp for using in food, drinks, and what do you call this word? Nutraceutical.
Nutraceutical.
Yeah,
it's a new word to me, Maya, I must admit.
Nutraceutical products.
Right.
So watch out, and a lot more developments are coming over this year as well. What I can say is it's a good opportunity if you're interested in this business, because the government also sponsors in the cannabis investment fair. So it's good opportunity out there.
Do you know when the fair is?
I think it started end of just last month, and this month it's coming up in Bangkok and in Chiang Mai.
Okay, interesting. But I'd imagine it's still quite tightly controlled, right?
Yes, tightly controlled substance.
Great. Do you mind if I ask you, have you tried it?
I did.
I won't go any further into that question. And that's all we have time for today in the business section. I'd like to thank AustCham Director Kun Chaiwat for joining us.
You're welcome.
And also, of course, having our New Zealand Thai Chamber of Commerce President, our ANZAC friends, Kun Maya, for joining us as well.
Thank you for inviting me as a representative from the New Zealand Thai Chamber of Commerce to be on AustCham TV. Thank you.
Pleasure. And we'll, of course, be going up to Kanchanaburi for Anzac Day later this month. Coming up next in our connection section, we meet the Minor Food Innovation Team. They're going to be cooking up for us a little treat, so stay with us. Welcome back. In our connections section this episode, we welcome AustCham Gold sponsor Minor International. And we have a very special surprise for you from the Minor Food Innovation Team. We have James and Khao. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Brendan.
Hello.
And they're going to show us how we can cook high quality restaurant food in your own kitchen at home. Gentlemen, what do you have for us today?
Thanks, Brendan. Today we're going to cook a beautiful Australian beef short rib in a cow soy curry.
That sounds like the ultimate, I'd say, Thai Australian fusion food.
It is. It's a super delicious dish with a very tender short rib cut. It's a great combination.
Excellent. So I believe that we've cooked the beef already. You've pre-cooked it. How long did that take?
Correct. So what we've done today is we've sous vide the short rib off the bone. It's been cooked at 58 degrees for about 6 hours until it's fork tender.
Right.
So that's a relatively new cooking technique, but it provides a super tender piece of beef at the end.
Great. So it's something, if you're cooking for a Sunday meal, you start early morning, do a few other activities while waiting for it to cook and have a nice lunch.
Correct, and if you can't sous vide it at home, you can always roast it or braise it or something like that in the oven.
Excellent. So we're going to be reheating it here, Khao?
Right here, yes. We're gonna reheat it in the gravy that we've prepared. It's a yellow curry with a little bit of, we're gonna add a little bit of coconut milk to make it nice and creamy.
Right.
Here, add that, give it a stir.
Excellent.
So we're gonna bring up the temperature up of the beef up to serving temp right now.
Simmering.
So, simmering.
Okay, great. And we have some other ingredients here. James, can you talk us through this?
Yeah, so what we have here is the traditional garnishes to cow soy. So we've got some homdang or small red shallots. I've got some crispy egg noodles. Over here on the plate is we've got some chilli, some pickled mustard greens, which are also quite traditional. What we've done differently today is we've done a khao mangai rice. So we're serving it with a chicken rice.
Yes.
And the chicken rice obviously gives it a lovely flavour that complements the curry.
Okay,
So something a little bit different.
that sounds good. And just for our audience who will be interested in cooking this, where can you buy the ingredients?
It's a good question, Brendan. All the ingredients are common ingredients in your Thai pantry.
Right.
So the curry paste is a common yellow curry that you can buy ready to cook. The rest of the ingredients are sort of off the shelf supermarket ingredients. I bought them all at the Villa this morning, so you can find these easily at Tops or a Villa or even at your local market.
Great. And you mentioned before, I believe, the beef came from Queensland.
Yeah, the beef sourced from Queensland. So we've taken it off the bone. You can leave it on the bone if you want to, but we think for ease of eating in a curry with rice and noodles, it's better to have it off the bone. So we've done that today,
Right.
and it's obviously easy to mop up with the curry and the rice.
Okay, great. So we're going to add this in now.
Correct. So I'll just get this ready here because we're going to serve it with a squeeze of lime juice.
Great. And just while you're doing that, I'll remind the audience that Minor Food, of course, are responsible for many great brands, including pizza company Sizzler, you can see on James's chef shirt here, also Burger King, various other. So you'd find that most times you're in a great food brand, often it's owned by Minor.
Okay, so we've got everything ready here. I'm going to plate the dish up now.
All right, the beef is ready, chef.
So the beef's hot.
Beef's hot.
Put that there for me. Okay.
I'll just let the audience know at the time of recording this, it's actually quite close to dinner time, so I'm very much looking forward to this.
Now I'm going to plate this a little bit differently. I've got the hot khao mangai rice here. I'm going to spoon this onto half of the plate.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Like this. It's going to sit there. And then this is our short rib here. So I'm going to put this just on the side there, like that. Now I think the key for the khao mangai is the sauce and the gravy that goes with it. So I'm going to add quite a lot because it really is the flavour. And I've got another short rib here for Brendan because I know he's super hungry.
If the camera zooms in, it will see me drooling at the moment. How often would you cook something like this yourself at home, James?
Oh, look, it depends on how much time I've got. But if I've got a bit of time, I'll put this on in the morning, and you sort of come back in the evening, and it's ready to eat.
Right.
So it's one of those dishes you can do while you're out for the day.
Fantastic.
Now we're going to finish this with a bit of crispy noodle. The crispy noodle is going to sit on the top here like this.
Right.
We can get it to stand up.
So it's also something that you could feel like you're dining out as well, just through the presentation.
Correct, correct. And the noodles give it a nice crispy taste. We're going to add some shallots to the side here.
Now, James, is this a menu we're going to see in one of the Minor food outlets soon?
Yeah, this is in the pipeline for some of our outlets.
Right.
So this will be one that's a bit of a fusion dish, but it'll come out towards the end of the year.
Okay, great. So while you are able to do it at home, and we are of course sharing the menu and the method as well, if you want the real thing, you should go to see one of the Minor food stalls.
Correct, maybe a Sizzler or something like that. Then we're just going to finish it with some chili here like this.
Wow. What's that one?
Got some edible flowers here that just give it a little bit of colour. Like that. I've got some mustard greens. Sort of sit on here.
So, James, is it okay if I take a photo of this when we're finished?
Sure, of course.
And I'm going to post it through my social media channels, and I might even take credit for actually cooking this.
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
maybe you did it.
There we go. Look out for me on social media.
And we're going to put a lime wedge there. And that is pretty much our cow soy short rib with crispy noodles.
Wow, that looks fantastic. Now, normally I would eat this myself, but in the interest of sharing, we have two special guest tasters here who were in our previous business episode. Can we welcome back Kun Chaiwat and Kun Maya to...
Maybe we'll do that just here.
Welcome back. And can we just break off a spoonful each for them, James, for them to try it?
Now, as you can see, it's fork tender.
Oh, well, it's falling,
Just breaks
falling
apart like
apart. You know it's tender when you can break it apart with a spoon. Sorry.
There you go. Brendan?
Thank you. I'll let ladies first, Maya. There we are. A little bit of khao mangai as well. Khao man, sorry.
Khao
No
man,
guy.
No guy. your turn.
My turn. Should I take the whole big bit? I'll break it up a little bit.
You know you want it. How is it? All right, mate? Good.
Very good.
Let's have a little try here.
Amazing.
That's it.
Wow. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan.
I know what we're having for lunch in Barn Cunningham this week. Thank you very much. So to James and Khao from the Minor Food Innovation Team, we appreciate your time. As mentioned, the menu will be sent out as well. But if you'd like the real thing, of course, visit any of the minor food outlets. And thank you to Kun Chaiwat and Kun Maya for also helping with the guest tasting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next in our community section, we meet a legend in the AustCham Thailand community who's going to tell us more about the history of Anzac Day at Hellfire Pass. Stay with us. And welcome back to our community section. Today, we're joined by what many would call a legend of AustCham Thailand. In fact, several of our other guests today have called him a legend. Original member of the Chamber back in 1977. John Hancock, 44 years with AustCham.
Wow. Time flies.
It certainly does. John, if just talking about the past 44 years, we could do several episodes on your experience with AustCham, but we've invited John in today to talk about Anzac Day and in particular AustCham's involvement in the Hellfire Pass Memorial Site. So John, back in the 80s, I believe, the AustCham Committee first became involved in the site up at Kanchanaburi.
No, that's correct. Just leading from your earlier comment, there is a lot I could talk about, but this is probably the most significant thing that we could talk about. It's a real highlight of the Chamber's activity, and it's a wonderful story how we got involved with this project.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm fortunate, but I'm glad we're doing this today because I still meet a lot of the AustCham audience who aren't aware of how a significant role that AustCham did play in the establishment of that Hellfire Pass Memorial and site. So maybe we can go back to the mid-80s, as we mentioned, and the key people who were involved back then.
Okay. A very interesting story. We talk about the Chamber, and it's sort of the amorphous Chamber body, but the things that really happen or are really significant come from the activities of individuals. And there's one individual who played a very significant role in the establishment or the location and development of Hellfire Pass, and that was a chap called Kenneth Bradbury. He was really the key that brought many different elements together and put Hellfire Pass right into the lap of AustCham. And AustCham took up that project with a huge amount of enthusiasm, and we appointed Ken as the chairman of the Hellfire Pass Committee, which we created at that time. Ken was a very active committee member, and he had participated very actively in a Ratanakosin Memorial project that we had in Kanchanaburi in 1982. That was, funnily enough, that was a project to provide power through a micro hydro plant for people who were displaced because of the building of the Vajiralongkorn Dam. The people who were building the dam were Snowy Mountains Engineering Corporation, a well-known Australian corporation. And in the course of building that dam, they came across many of the old trails, a lot of the old railroad and sleepers and spikes. And they used to get an occasional visit from prisoners of war Australian prisoners of war who used to make a pilgrimage back to that area. Took them many years to get enough courage, I think, to come back and visit that site. And then they came up. They would obviously run into the Snowy Mountains people and talk about where the track was located. There was a chap called Jim Appleby who was working with SMEC at that stage, and he helped AustCham on the development of the microhydro project in 1982, and they became, Ken and Jim Appleby became very good friends, and then they also interrelated with a chap called Tom Morris, who was a POW who had come back quite often to visit that area, and who had a real passion for a memorial of some kind in Thailand to represent the events of World War II in that area. So they were a very tight little group.
It sounds like it, yes.
Very tight little group,
and each playing a key part as well. 3 very key parts in the development.
Absolutely. Tom, had the connections in Australia. He was helping POWs come up.
Right.
He had a lot of history and background. He knew what he was looking for. Jim knew where things were. Ken was a geologist working with Unocal, which is now Chevron.
Right.
And he had a real passion for this, and those 3 worked very closely together to try and map out the area, to find out what was in that area, and they focused very much on Hellfire Pass, which was, they knew where it was, but it was in the jungle behind a Thai military installation.
It's hard to imagine now when you go and see the full museum. Obviously that wasn't there before, it was just jungle. So for anyone who goes to Hellfire Pass and see the beautiful site there, what John is talking about was just pure jungle that Ken, Jim and Tom were wandering through.
Oh, absolutely. There was a little track off the road behind this military installation. There was a bit of a drop, and it was just all total jungle there. And so as those 3 worked together, Tom developed more interest from the Australian side, and they contacted various people, did surveys, mapped out the area, and they actually got some funding. They got $25,000 from the Australian government. It was the Australian bicentennial that was providing funds for certain events and activities, and they managed to get $25,000 to help on this project. So the momentum started on this. Ken was our committee member. We created the Hellfire Pass Committee, and then they also got a larger group involved. They got the defence attaché. They had some military people. And there was quite a group working together on working out what to do, how to move forward, and how to develop that. We used to have working bees. We used to go up to Kanchanaburi for the weekends and chop trees down to sort of cut our way through, so that we could create a path that people could walk into.
The path that people walk into now.
They could actually, with the very crude path. And this committee worked together with the Thai government. The military said they were willing to allow access for a memorial. They gave permission for it. The Australian government had been looking for a memorial somewhere on the track, and they decided that they thought Hellfire Pass was a good location, based on the work that Jim Appleby and Tom Morris had done to identify that. It was a solid object, 75 metres through the solid rock, 25 metres deep.
It's amazing.
So a lot of the railroad was totally disappeared, but this actual rock with culvert that had been cut through still remained. Wow. It was very permanent, very close to the road, very dramatic. So that was chosen as the location for that site.
And once it got momentum then, you mentioned when we were talking prior to this interview that it became the post-founding era where a lot more Australians, particularly politicians and VIPs, started to come up.
Yeah, well, no, that's true. There was the initial period through to it was like 83, 84 through to 89, which I call the Bradley period, because Ken Bradley was such a passionate guy and such a dominant force in that, and Ken coordinated all those things during that period. But actually, during that period, we did have visits from the Governor General Hayden. We also had a visit from Bob Hawke, came up at that stage. Tim Fisher, who was a great supporter of Thailand for many, many years, he came up here, and also Sir Edward Weary Dunlop, who was a very, very famous doctor who was a prisoner of war in that area, and did just a fabulous job on supporting the people there on their medical needs. So they were some big names that came up and visited, and so that momentum really got going. And during that first period, a plaque was put together, and there was a dedication of that plaque by Weary Dunlop. He came up, and there was a dedication. Somewhere in my files, I've got a video I took of that dedication with, and it was Weary gave a very, very long speech, for sure. But after that, then there was a lot of interest in it. A lot of visiting Australian armed forces people who came up here. They would make visits, and they would move some railroad in there, clear things, tidy things up. There were a whole lot of activities that took place during that period, and subsequently the Labor Prime Minister at that time,
Paul
Keating. Came up here and was involved with the opening of a walking trail that was first created there to enable people to at least clearly walk around that area, and he committed some Australian funds to it.
Wow.
And then we had I think Bob Hawke came back again, and then ultimately in 1998, Prime Minister John Howard came to Thailand and officially opened the centre there, the interactive. What's the term?
Yeah, the Hellfire Pass interactive centre.
Yeah, the interactive.
Memorial.
No, there's another term for it. The memorial. So it's following that 1998. Basically, everything was done. It was the access was there. The walkway was there, the museum, and
so there have been renovations over the years, but essentially that site, the memorial, the trail down into the cutting, was all completed by the 1998, the late 90s.
That's right, and that was the sort of the point in time at which there was significant Australian government support. There was a full-time person employed to look after
Hellfire Pass Centre.
To look after that. So that kind of period, I would say, 14, 15 years, in which the Chamber, from the very commencement, the Chamber played a continuing role on fundraising, clearing, finding access, surveying, raising funds, inviting people up there, special guests to come up, and doing all the huge amount of administration and coordination that had to be done with the government departments here. It was almost, I wouldn't say it was a sigh of relief when Prime Minister Howard opened in 1998 and took it over. But I remember at the time, I was president at that time, and I remember how we all went along to the ceremony, and we sort of left the ceremony thinking, did anyone know that we were involved so heavily in this? We sort of like felt it was taken over completely, and that we were sort of a bit redundant on that.
You could see how it would have been like that, and you can see now. I appreciate you coming in and updating on the story, because a lot of AustCham, the AustCham audience now will ask the significance of why we always do the tour up there, and it really is an important part of what the Chamber does. And in my role, I know I've taken that on to make sure that the story continues to be told, and we'll certainly be sharing this video to make sure that the AustCham audience do know how important it is for our community. So.
No, I mean, that's great, Brendan, because it is, I think it's probably the most significant project the Chamber has ever done. A huge number of people on committees, presidents throughout that whole period, and a lot of other members put in huge hundreds of hours of work on that, and fortunately some of that is memorialised. There's a very nice publication called Hellfire Pass Memorial, which Ken Bradley actually wrote. Right. He actually wrote this back in '87.
And when you're visiting, you can of course get them from Hellfire.
Is that right? That's available there, because that's been updated from time to time. Right. And also, if you wanted to read more about Ken Bradley, the AustCham the monthly newsletter of July 2019
that's right.
has a very nice summary of Ken Bradley's involvement. And Ken, to sort of close off on Ken.
Right.
Every time I went to Hellfire Pass, I would think of Ken Bradley, and I thought I have to find this guy, because we have to honour him and recognise him in some way. And over the years, I tried to find him. I checked with Khao. I wrote letters to them and say, where is he now? Because he left Burma, he went to Kazakhstan. Where I couldn't find him anywhere. I kept trying, because this guy we have to honour. And I was so pleased that a couple of years ago, AustCham was contacted with respect to Keith being nominated for Australian honours. And the people at the Chamber said, who's this chap? Ken Bradley.
I actually received the email and I forwarded on to you. That's correct.
Does anyone know him? And Brendan forwarded it over to me, and I said, you're absolutely, my God, we've found him at last. And he's being honoured by the Australian government, and it was just so exciting that we could actually recover him, and he in due course he was given an AOM, and he's writing a detailed history of this, which we'll all read about in some time.
Excellent. So John, that's all we have time for today. I really appreciate you coming in and telling the story. It is a very important story for AustCham Thailand's history, and I'm sure we'll be able to update it in other ways over the years to make sure that the legacy continues. So thank you, John.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And that's the end of our program today for AustCham Thailand's Business Connections and Community. We'll see you next time.